All right, number 7. So let's start with this. If you get stuck, just try to maybe. Usually, the trick that works the best is turn stuff into sine and cosine. So what does tangent turn into?
Sine over cosine.
Sine over cosine. So if it's multiplying, it would look like that. Alright, this thing is in one of the tables. Basically, if it's a 90-degree shift, it's just going to be, if it's sine, it turns into cosine. If it's tangent, it turns into cotangent. If it's secant, it turns into
That one turns into cosecant.
cosine. I think I put the wrong letter there. Okay. So what's this first term going to become?
Sine squared over cosine.
Sine squared over cosine. I'm going to drop the a's for a while. Sine squared over cosine plus cosine. Okay, to add two fractions together, what do we need? Or, well, one's a fraction. What do we need to add a fraction? Common denominator. What's the common denominator? Cosine is cosine over 1. What's the common denominator between these two going to be? What will they both go into? Cosine. So you need to multiply this one by cosine. But if you do that to the bottom, you do it to the top. What's the top times cosine?
Cosine squared.
Cosine squared. So we have sine squared over cosine plus cosine squared over cosine. Alright, once you have the common denominator, you can add the numerators. Sine squared plus cosine squared over the common denominator, cosine. Does this ring a bell yet? What's sine squared plus cosine squared?
Tangent.
1. So this is 1 over cosine, which equals, what's cosine upside down? Secant. I'll put the letter back in, the variable for the angle. That would be it.
Up there, where'd you get sine squared?
Right here. So that turned into that. That times that, sine squared. So, kind of like I said yesterday, there's not like one way to do it. If you're comfortable with adding and subtracting and multiplying and dividing fractions, it makes it easier. But a lot of times it helps if you turn stuff into sine and cosine. Number 9, secant b minus tangent. Not equals secant b plus tangent. Alright, what do you guys think? What should we do first? We did some of these yesterday. What kind of problem does this look like? Foil. Foil problem. And when we foil conjugates, what happens? The outside inside cancels out. So we can just do the first secant times secant. And then negative tangent times tangent. Okay. Yesterday, did we have a formula with secant squared and tangent squared? Yeah, I did believe we did. 317, right?
So you'd have to go equal like 9.
Okay, on the bottom of 317 it says 1 plus tangent squared
Oh.
equals secant squared. So we're trying to change this into this. So how do I turn it into secant squared minus tangent squared?
Minus the secant.
No. Minus tangent squared. Secant squared minus tangent squared would be equal to what? 1. So this equals 1. Cosecant minus cotangent. What letters are we using? Okay, we could foil these. I don't think that's gonna be the easiest way to go. This would be a messier foil. So instead of trying to foil, I'm gonna try to simplify, like put these together. I'm gonna start by turning these into their alternate versions. What is cosecant the same thing as?
Over sine.
1 over sine. Okay, what is cotangent the same thing as? Yeah, well, you could say it's 1 over tangent, but let's do the sine and cosine version. Yesterday, remember, we had this on the board. Tangent is sine over cosine, and that means cotangent is cosine over sine. So we'll do that. Cosine over sine. Okay, what's secant turn into? 1 over cosine. Alright. Do these two go together? Yeah, since they have a common denominator, this is just 1 minus cosine over sine.
Bless you.
Alright. What is 1 as a fraction? 1 over 1. What's the common denominator? Cosine. So if I multiply by cosine, 1 over 1 can turn into cosine over cosine. So this one turns into 1 plus cosine over cosine.
Mr. Jordan, you're recording, right?
No. Just kidding. Did I scare you?
Yeah, you did.
Gotcha. You've had an exciting morning. Driving to school, not getting the lesson recorded. Alright,
What music did you listen to? I didn't. I was just scared. That was actually me.
were you going like 20 and a 40 or something?
I think it was speeding.
Because you're tense, going too fast.
Yeah.
Okay, so if we multiply the top together, what would that be?
1 minus cosine.
It'd be 1 minus cosine squared. It's technically a foil, but they cancel out. So it's 1 minus cosine squared on top. And what's on bottom? Well, it doesn't really simplify. We're multiplying, it's just sine times cosine. It doesn't really simplify. I'll pull a dot right there. Okay, does any of this ring a little bell in your guys' head yet? Just 1 minus cosine squared is sine squared. So, okay, let's go back and review this again. This is one of the things we used a lot yesterday. Sine squared plus cosine squared equals 1. So if you subtract cosine squared, that, right? right? Or if you subtract sine squared on both sides, looks like that. Got the squares. Okay, so got to kind of manipulate these equations. So 1 minus cosine squared is the same thing as sine squared. That wasn't as manly as mine, Lydia. You need to up your game. Okay, any ideas right now?
Could the sign cancel out?
Okay, one of the signs cancels out. It's kind of like, you know, if you had x squared y over xy, like one of the x's would cancel out. So that's what's going on. One of the signs will cancel out, so it's just sine over cosine. Is there a simpler way of writing sine over cosine? Tangent. What letter were we using? X, so tangent of x. Are you sick?
No.
She's in denial.
You're like, ow.
Now.
Skylar was trying to make it like a mountain of used Kleenexes on my desk yesterday.
She was parking and her dad walks out with a chihuahua in his hand, pajamas and no shoes on.
That's all he wears.
Yes,
He
a
drops her off.
chihuahua. She parked, the spot was like this and her like front
She
tires were like
parks
so
so
bad out.
It's really bad.
A chihuahua.
Is that one not
I'm
allowed?
kidding. He was like holding it like this. It was like riding.
He wrote 11.
Mr. Jordan, that was 11. We're on 13 now. I'm sorry.
This one looks like the last one, except for we're already like almost done. What's 1 minus cosine squared turn into?
Sine squared?
Sine squared. How does it simplify?
You can get rid of sines.
One of the signs cancels out. What's cosine over sine equal to? Yeah, remember this one? Sine over cosine is tangent. Cosine over sine is cotangent. Is killing me. Jealousy. Oof. 15's a problem.
Are all
That problem, I'll solve it.
No.
All right. Any ideas on this one?
Put the squares on all of them.
Well, no, you can't. Like, if you have like x plus y squared, does that equal x squared plus y squared?
yes.
No, it does not. You guys should know that. It equals x plus y times x plus y. You have to multiply all of it times all of it, which means it's a FOIL kind of problem. So same thing on these guys. So this is sine plus cosine times sine plus cosine. It's a FOIL. And they are not conjugates, so you do have to FOIL everything. First, outside, inside, last. First, sine times sine is sine squared. Outside is sine times cosine. Inside is the same thing, sine, cosine. And the last is cosine times cosine, so cosine squared. Uh, so this one's almost the same except for there's a minus right there. So I'm gonna cheat and put a little minus right here. It's not gonna change
It's not
a
gonna
lot. But you'd still have, I'm just gonna write below it, sine times sine, so it's still sine squared. On the outside though, we have sine times negative cosine. So it's like minus sine cosine. On the inside, same thing, minus sine cosine. But on the last, we have negative times negative, so it's positive. Okay, now all of these things are just added together. We're not multiplying like the other problems. So what's going to happen if I just try adding all this stuff?
Won't it go cancel out?
Yeah, this is like 2 sine cosine minus 2 sine. Yeah, these just cancel out, right? If we're adding. What else?
2 sine squared, 2 cosine squared.
2 sine squared plus 2 cosine squared.
Equals 1 or 2.
Yeah. So there's a couple ways you could think about it. If I took a 2 out, remember like factor taking stuff out, it would be sine squared plus cosine squared. Sine squared plus cosine squared is equal to 1 times 2. It is 2, yes. It's killing me. Cotangent squared 1 plus cosecant. Maybe I should put the letters in there. Theta.
Oh, yeah, you're taking grip.
Well, let's start over here. You guys notice something about this guy?
The reciprocals?
Yeah. Cosecant is the reciprocal of sine. So what happens when you multiply sine times
1.
it's 1? This is like sine times 1 over sine. This is 1. Wait. Okay. So one of the formulas, I don't know, we might have used this one once yesterday. It has cotangent squared in it and cosecant in it. So that's kind of a hint. Let me write it out. This one's a hard one. I don't think 18. I hope 18 is not this hard. 1 plus cotangent squared.
It is.
You don't know.
I just looked.
You don't know how to do this one, so how do you know? Okay, anyways. So, what could I turn cotangent squared into? Cotangent squared equals what?
Cosine squared over sine squared.
Well, okay, in this case, since there's a cosecant, I'm gonna do a cosecant thing with this formula. So I'm gonna subtract 1. Cotangent squared is equal to cosecant squared minus 1. Okay, do you guys remember factoring x squared minus 1? Like, how does that factor?
Given x minus 1, x plus 1.
X minus 1, x plus, it's a square minus a square, right? You just do like the roots of both, x minus 1, x plus 1. So, if it was x squared minus 1 over x plus 1, what would happen is one of those would cancel out. And it just equals x minus 1. That's what's happening right here. This is like x squared minus 1. So what is cosecant squared minus 1 factor to?
Cosecant minus 1, cosecant plus 1.
Yeah. And what's going to happen? Those will cancel out. These are the same thing. Cosecant plus 1, 1 plus cosecant. So we got cosecant minus 1 plus 1, which equals cosecant. Throw the theta back in there. Daunting, right?
Yep.
Let's see. Let's do it. 18 is the same thing as 17. I just looked at it, yeah. Tangent squared turns into like 1 minus secant squared if you look at that formula. Or secant squared minus 1, I said it backwards.
Yeah.